Hello and welcome to the Birchal Podcast. My name is Emily, I'm your host, and today I'm joined by Tim Griffiths, who is a serial entrepreneur, a partner at Scalare Partners, a tech and strategic advisor. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I feel like the introduction could go absolutely anywhere with you. You've lived about 1,000 lives and done about 1,000 things.
I'm that old that I have lived 1,000 lives.
That old guy.
But it's been brilliant.
I mean, it's a real treat to have you on here.
Thank
I'm
you.
glad that you could come out of the retirement village just for me. What a pleasure. So can you tell me a little bit about Scalare Partners for people who don't know what it is? And
Yeah,
what you do?
absolutely. We're an early stage investment firm, VC firm based in Sydney. We found about 5 years old. All of us within the business are serial entrepreneurs. We've all founded businesses, so we know what it's like to found businesses. And we are typically first check-in after the friends and family round. We also run a range of services. We have a service model, so we provide help and advice to startups as well as other companies. We give that investment money as well. And we have two other streams to the business. So we run Australian Technologies competition. So that's a competition for early stage companies, and they get a set of masterclasses over a period and then a presentation a few months later. So that's really bringing them along with the ecosystem and helping them be found in the ecosystem as well. Oh yes, we also have Tech Ready Women as part of the portfolio as well. So we're great believers in supporting female founders. So that again is an early stage incubator where we take women that have an idea and really have no idea on how to execute on that, and we take them through literally 101. This is what it's like to run a business. What is your idea? And we guide them through that, and at the end of it, hopefully they will get some funding, and then they'll move on from there. So that's sort of the four pillars of what we do as a business. We've been around 5 years, got just over 30 investments, and we worked with about 60 odd companies through that period of time. So yeah.
Okay, so pretty huge after 5 years to already be at this stage.
Yeah.
I understand you've just gone public as well.
Yes. I mean, the difference between Scalare and a lot of the early stage investment firms out there is that we don't run a fund. We invest off our balance sheet. So what that means is that we don't run a 2 and 20 model, so we don't take any money out of the business to run the business, and we don't have a carry on it. So what we do is we've raised money, and we have gone public. We've done it a very, very different way. Previously, we raised money through our own money as well as our wider community, and we don't take preferential shares. We invest for growth with them. We want to go on the journey with them, but by going public, it allows us to do sort of 2 or 3 things. Firstly, it's a flexible funding mechanism, so we can go up as we get more opportunities. We can pull more money in. Secondly, it allows anyone that wants to invest a way of getting their money out if they want to. So they have a life-changing event or something like that. So if you invest in a fund, typically you're locked in for 5 to 10 years and you can't get your money out. It's just what it is. Now you might get a great return at the end of it, which is good, but you might have a position in the middle of that 5 years where you might need to get some money out. Whereas being on the public markets, we're judged on what we do because we have to put regular information updates out there. But it also means that anyone that wants to put a bit of money in or take some money out, they can do that. And then we'll be judged on our results on the way through. But also for any of our portfolio companies, there's a potential, and it's not there yet because we've only been listed, 3 weeks, is that if they want to take something off the table later on or they want to do a different type of mechanism, it just allows us to do that. And I think all of us within Scalare, we're not normal, is the best way to put it, right? We like to do things differently. All of us, you don't build, not the average person doesn't build a company out of something and then decide to start a VC firm.
Yeah.
And I think we just like to do something a bit different, and we'd like to give it a go, and we're doing really well out of it. And it's an exciting times, and it has exciting growth.
Awesome. Can you give me an example of some of the companies that you've helped fund at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a regulatory background checking and passport platform called MyPass that works across the mining industry. So that means if you are changing jobs between mines, they have all of the requirements for the licenses in their platform. So it means that each of the companies, they don't need to go through all that KYC, KYB side of things that they need to do typically for when they change jobs. We have.
Sorry to interrupt you. For
yeah.
those who don't know, can you explain what KYC is?
Sorry,
I know it because we have to do it every day.
Sorry,
but-
know your customers. So when you open up a bank account, let's say, and you have to provide or rent a property, you have to provide two types of ID or three types of ID, one with a photo on, and that's what that is, to prove you are who you say you are. And secondly, obviously, if you work in any sort of industry that is got regulations around it, you'll typically have a license to do certain things. So if you're in mining, it could be I'm allowed to do in open cast mines, or I can do underground, or I'm an electrician. So and all of these licenses and everything, that's what they do. So the other side of it, we have one company that has a patented piece of technology that allows sheep farmers, when they shear the wool, it'll actually test the grade of the wool and therefore tell them how much that's worth on the market.
Oh, wow.
So it gives them a percentage. That's really super clever. Early stage, but doing, it's really super clever. That's a nice thing about what we do, right? You look at it and go, well, that's amazing. Who would have come up with that?
I think this every day at Birchal. The companies that come through, I'm like, this is genius. We had Fremantle seaweed earlier this year, if you recall, and it's basically seaweed that gets turned into cattle food that reduces methane emissions. Which is so exciting. I never knew that was a thing. I did know that seaweed is carbon sequestering. So when it grows, it actually takes in carbon and produces oxygen, and it obviously has a different footprint to what you'd see on land for trees. So it's really interesting going into that space, and opens your eyes to what these new and emerging industries and businesses are.
And you need to sort methane out with cows because they're one of the biggest, that's the...
I know. Well, we had another one come through. I could yap all day. I mean, I'm supposed to be letting you talk, but we had another one. It was Clever Cow, and there was a chemical that was put into cattle feed again to reduce the methane emissions. But we always have a lot of haters on Facebook and Instagram commenting and saying, well, now what if we eat these cows, we're going to be eating these chemicals, or this is too expensive for the farmers. Everybody's got something to say. Do you feel like that comes into when you're trying to invest in these businesses and help them scale and grow, that you've got the naysayers in the background?
I think, honestly, no, because we don't worry about that. And ultimately, we're investing in these companies because we believe in them. And more importantly, the founders believe in what they're doing, and they have a mission, and and are driven to deliver that, right? So there are, we only do, 8 investments a year. We're not throwing money out there all the time, so we're very picky about what we do. And we do a fair bit of diligence on them, because ultimately our job is, or what we want to do, is we want to go on that journey with them. And listen, building a startup is not linear. It's not like I've raised some money and next week I'm going to sell it for $1 billion or whatever it is, right? It has its ups and downs, ebbs and flow. And we want to be on that journey with them. And, I sort of alluded to, we invest, we put our arm around them, and we go on the journey with them. And at the bad times we're there, and the good times we're there, and we can help them on the advisory side. No, we're not there to run a business. We're just there as a if you need a backstop, we take a board position or advisory position as part of what we do. But I think the thing is that because we've got a wider community, the Scalare community sits at about 100 odd people that sit in different businesses around Australia and globally, that if you need to say, well, I've hit this, I'd like to understand a bit more about this industry, we can say, go and speak to so-and-so, because they'd love to have a chat. So it's a community-based feel about what we do. And we're trying not to be there's your money, now go away, right? It's part of what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you mentioned that you work with a lot of female founders to support them from the ground up.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about how you go about that differently?
Absolutely, yes. So as I said, we recently bought Tech Ready Women into the portfolio, which is an amazing. It's an amazing idea, great execution. We've literally just done We've literally just done a cohort with Westpac. So Westpac are bringing their own, because they want to promote that themselves. So we've sort of got this beautiful, I think it is beautiful, process where we can just help female founders. And ultimately, I think the challenge that is out there for female founders at the moment is is just being heard. And we want to have a platform to allow them to be heard, but also allow them to be able to speak, because that's the other problem as well, right? Where you need the ability for them to find their voice.
Yeah.
And I suppose our mission on that side of things is just to allow as many as possible to come through and have a go. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay, but they've learned something. Or get them help and get funded, but it's up to their personal journey. But we don't want them to feel frightened about doing because the problem is especially in technology, right? My background as a technologist, it is always been a very male-dominated industry. Right? It still is. And that, there's great things like Ali, Girls at Code and stuff like that, doing amazing things in the ecosystem. And we need more of that. And I think, especially from my side of things, I've always tried personally to bring as much diversity into my businesses, right? So my previous business, I had my tech team set at about 26 people, had 14 different nationalities in that, as well as it was about a 50-50 split female-male, right?
Wow, okay.
And that's quite an interesting way to do that. And that also stems from, I think, early in my career, I was lucky enough to live in Luxembourg in Europe. And I was part of a team over there that had about 30 odd people, and there were about 10 different nationalities. And it was the diversity of that, not just with females, but also different cultural elements to it as well, I think really makes you more rounded. And the world is a big place, right? And
Absolutely.
It's hugely intertwined and interconnected. So from Scalare to actually promote and actively get involved and help female founders is part of just what we do. It's a funny thing, we don't really think of it as it's just what we do.
Yeah, right.
It's not, I don't see it as anything, it is special, but we just say it's needed. Let's just do it.
Yeah. It's interesting. This comes up a lot on the podcast because, studies do show that female founders statistically get less funding than male founders. Why do you think that is? I mean, big question.
It is a huge question, and it depends where you are in the world. Listen, the world has been run by grey-haired old men for many, many years, says the old grey man sitting in the corner, right? But it has. And I think it's changing, and it's changing correctly because it's an interesting thing because there's two sides to this, right? So you've got, I think there's female founders or females in general moving into large executive positions. And I don't want to get into the sort of the child side of things and having children, but there's plenty of women that want to be in that position and don't want to be in that position for various reasons. And I think it's important to allow everything to be on its own merit.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're listened to because they've never had the opportunity or the platform to be able to do that. The interesting thing is, previous to Scalare, I was on the board of a public company. I founded a company, we took that public. And one of the things that our investors would say, your board isn't that diverse, right? So we had our board was all male, right? And basically it was the two co-founders, male, company secretary who came with the business, basically male, and then we had two very specific people that were industry agnostic, right? So we needed them in the business because they understood that. We actively went out to find a more diverse board, but we couldn't find that because when you're a director of a public company, there's a lot of risk that sits with that, governance and risk. And a lot of women we spoke to about that were saying, we want to be a CEO first before we go to a board. But when you looked at our next level down, our executive level, which didn't come up in any of the reports, you go head of marketing, female, CFO, female, CTO, female. That we had of the executive team of 6, 4 were female.
Right.
And then one of the others was also was originally non-English speaking. So I think that the interesting thing also on tech is that I personally think that female developers are amazing because they think differently and they add some, there's nothing worse than a bro type culture in development.
Oh yeah.
And that's also something that I think is really culturally it's just there, and it's changing, and it's going to just take a bit of time, right? It's part of where we are in society.
Yeah.
But I'm really positive about it, to be quite honest.
I think what you said about women not wanting to go on the board of directors because they don't want to take that risk really resonated with me from not only a business founder standpoint, but also an investor standpoint.
Yeah.
So we find that if a company comes through Birchal that has a larger female community, if you would say,
Yeah.
you will find that the females invest at lower amounts, and it's not necessarily because they have less money than male investors, it's because they are more risk averse. And so investing into an early stage high risk startup is not something that appeals to them in that sense.
Yes.
And then similarly, for women who are raising funds, they say, okay, if I am going to take on additional shareholders or additional funds, therefore I've got more responsibility and I'm taking a risk taking on extra people and that extra responsibility. And I wonder if that goes hand in hand with why women aren't necessarily getting investment. Is it because they're not asking for it?
No, that's what it says about the platform, really, to be quite honest. And also being out there in where that a lot of them don't know they can do this because they just don't. It's not presented to them. So we're trying to get that out there to say, listen, come and have a chat with us. Come and have a look at what we do at Tech Ready Women. Come and have a look at what we do at Scalare, and then trying to build that. So we're working very closely with a lot of the universities as well. We do presentations to universities, trying to capture them early to say, look, just come and have a conversation. We're always open to a conversation, right? If it leads somewhere, it leads somewhere. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But if you don't try, you don't know.
What do you think your main differences are when you're working with a female founder versus a male founder?
Well, I'd like to say nothing. They should all be treated equal.
No, I mean, how do they interact with you in a different way? Because I definitely notice a difference.
That's a really interesting question. I'd say they're a lot more organised. They come well prepared.
Yes.
Well prepared. And probably a bit more to the point. Mm-hmm. I find them it's a nice conversation because all the T's are crossed, all the I's are, and you have a conversation about the business. And you probably don't need to do as much digging with some of the male founders that come in and it's a bit scrappy.
Yeah, right.
But I also think a lot of that is just down to the best foot forward. I mean, some of the presentations we see are shocking in general, right? And you just think, well, why do you even think that's a good thing?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I went to an event I was judging at a pitch event in Western Sydney a couple of weeks ago, and the diversity of what was being done there was unreal, right? And not just female founders, but it's from the Indigenous side of things and non-Australian speaking, and it puts a real positive spin on things. For myself, originally came from the UK and just outside London in general. It was a very, very, structured way that you did business. But I think some of the opportunity right now with some of the technology and the way you can do things I've never seen this before. And I started, literally putting tin in big windy rooms. But now you can spin up something on Amazon or Google or whatever you want. And then with all the advent of the AI that's coming through as well, you can actually get to a proof of concept or MVP very, very quickly.
Yeah, right.
And you can do that ideation and you don't really, sorry for the developers out there, you don't really need to have a full dev involved with you. That you need some technology, understanding of technology and what you want to do. But I think it's really, really important and really clever and exciting at the moment that this type of technology exists. And therefore, if you can sit and watch a YouTube video, and I'm really oversimplifying things here, but there's plenty of information out there that you can give it a go, and then go to a local startup hub and just pitch it. What's the worst that can happen, right?
Exactly. I think that when I sit down and listen to a pitch, because I have to listen to pitches most days for people who want to raise capital on Birchal, and I see some good ones and I see some bad ones. What do you think are the key features of the good ones, and what are the key features of the bad ones?
I think the key features of the good ones are being able to succinctly say what problem they're fixing, why they're doing it, and why they're the people to be able to execute on it. So you understand almost what's driving them to do that. And I think to a certain degree, and the team around them that is going to execute on that, or what team they're going to build to be able to do that. So from my side of things, I think that really, it's like, it doesn't have to be it doesn't even have to be like a presentation. It's just like, tell me what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're going to do it, and why that's important to you. The why is always important, right? And the how, we can help with the how. And I think it's important to have that deep sense of conviction and understanding of what you're doing. And then you've got, those that come across, which is almost like another one of those, or another one of those, or another one of those. You see that, back in 2020 around in 2021 with sort of all the blockchain and NFC and all of that. It was just, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And the thing is you need an element of those, because you look at it and go, well, that's mad. But what came afterwards, and a lot of it is still in, I don't want to call it stealth mode, but it's underground at the moment. But ultimately, some of the stuff that came out of that chaos of that time, and it was a bit chaotic in places, is brilliant. Same with where we're going with AI at the moment. Like, every man and his dog is, AI agents and AI this and AI that, which is great.
ChatGPT was down yesterday. Yeah, it was a horrible day. I'm addicted to it.
There are other options out there.
I'm aware. I think I just got so sold on ChatGPT. I love it so much.
But I think that's the other thing as well, right? Because when you look at something around the AI at the moment, the deep tech that's running it, when you're bringing your own, whether you're integrating with the OpenAI, or whether you're integrating with any of the others, the challenge with that is that your business is built on the capability of their APIs and things.
Yes.
As opposed to, well, I can grab an LLM, I can actually roll it myself, I can put it into, you could spin it up on Amazon, you could put it into many operators out there, GCP and side of things. So ultimately, the LLMs are out there, the training data is out there, and you can actually make it your own. And I think that's the exciting part about it, is that you could go to Meta, you could grab their Llama LLM, you can bring it down, you can tune it, you can tweak it, and you can run it yourself. Now, there's an element of technology behind to do that, or you can chuck it into OpenAI and run it through that, right? And then obviously you've got the, Elon's, new platform coming through as well. So I think the challenge with all of this AI, the ChatGPT is great, and it's becoming prevalent. Everyone uses it. But the AI agents that are coming through at the moment, some of these I'm seeing are unreal, absolutely unreal, that you can run a business on it. So not only can I spin platforms up very, very quickly in cloud-based systems, but I can actually bring agents to do some of the work for me, which is great.
Yeah, it's so cool. I think we're so lucky, and we're going into such an exciting time. Obviously, you've built companies in the past and tech companies. Yeah. What do you think you would do differently if you were building them now versus then?
Well, I think the challenge around what I've done in the past, and I always say I'm a 3 times failure, because I had 3 businesses, all 3 businesses before I.
Some people are a triple threat. Some people are triple failures. You know.
Do you know what? I'm not sure I'd do much differently, because when I was building those businesses, I was sort of on, I wouldn't say the bleeding edge, but we were learning as we were going. And what I learned in one, move through to the second, move through to the third, move through to the fourth. And the problem is that, like, you learn from your failures. As an ex-hardware engineer, the day what you actually learn is the Friday night at 8 p.m. when you get a call out and you've got to get this thing up and running, right? Because people need to use systems, or they need to pay people, and that's when you really, really learn. And I think that's part of the failure ethos that you need to understand, is that it's not always going to work. I mean, 8 in 10 startups fail. It's just a fact. Yeah. But ultimately, what you want is the ability to go again. I worked for 6 years for Benchmark Capital in London. So Benchmark, a large VC firm out of the US, and they were the original money behind like eBay and PayPal and Juniper Networks and a lot of these. And I worked for them on the technology side, doing diligence and internal tech. And the interesting thing about their model, and this was in the late 90s, so just after the dot-com crash, really, late 90s, early noughties, was they embraced failure. The whole point is that, okay, we've invested in you, you've given it a go, you failed, but what we're going to do is we're going to bring you in. They coined the entrepreneur in resident, where they said, you might have failed, but what we're going to do is we're going to bring you back in for however long, we're going to give you a wage, and you're going to think up your next one, and you're going to go again. So it allowed them a safe space to fail. And the interesting thing is that a lot of those people that did do that went on to create second and third companies that have done exceedingly well, and now are actually partners. Some of them are actually partners in other firms. So I think the one thing that we need to embrace is the fact you're never going to get it right every time, and you need to embrace, the failure of a business or your own shortcomings, but you need to have a go. And that's the thing with going back to the female founders. You've got to have a go. But if you've got to know that you can have a go. And I think that's where at Scalare, we want to be that safe space.
Right.
Where you can come. We'd like you to succeed, obviously, but ultimately we are very, very aware that, not everything works every time.
Actually, I went to an interesting discussion held by the girls who run the marketing team at Diary of a CEO.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the girls, her actual title was Chief of Failure.
Right.
And so
Brilliant.
her main intention was to, just experiment as much as possible so that you can fail fast to scale fast, which is a really interesting concept, I think, and a lot of people don't do it. I'm pretty afraid of failure, and that being said, I've definitely made mistakes in my time that have led me to where I am today. And I think that those are the key things I often ask founders when I have them in the chair is, what is the biggest mistake you've ever made that has helped you to learn the most? What do you think yours is?
Oh, that's so deep and wide, because we all lie there at night and wake up and go, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Or did I really do that?
Or like the fantasy investment portfolio that you don't have that you should have invested in,
Yeah, we've all got those.
Yeah.
We've all got those. I think sometimes probably trusting the wrong people. People you think have your back, people you think
yes,
but ultimately don't.
That's just made me think a lot. That's a really good answer. Absolutely. So I think that a lot of the time people are in it for themselves, and you see in the business world a lot of fake people, particularly on platforms like LinkedIn, and you see these big long spiels about where they've come from and what they're trying to achieve, and you get people messaging you for a coffee just to try so they can try to get somewhere.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really,
you have to protect
really
your time.
interesting.
You have to protect your time, because time's the only thing that is, it goes, right? I think the other side of it is that it's whether you see the world as friendly or hostile.
Yeah, right.
So we've all got friends that they come back and say, oh, this happened to me on the train, and this happened to me in the bus, or da-da-da's doing this to me. And you go, that's never happened to me. But they seem to always go from one chaotic thing to another, and they always, and I'm, to a degree, my philosophy is, well, what's the worst that can happen? I see everyone as, I want to help people. I've never been, and this is why I love about Scalare, that, all of us in Scalare genuinely want to help people build something and do, and support them on that journey. But for me personally, I've never been concerned with where you went to school, what degree you've got, what age you are, what sex you are, what orientation you are, what color you are. It doesn't worry me. I just want to know that you want to do what you want to do. And ultimately, anyone that works for me, I want them to leave, right? I want them to leave. I want them to get to a point where they go, I've had a great journey, but I want to go and do something else. I don't want them to, and this is going to be slightly controversial, I would rather they learned something and went and bettered themselves elsewhere because they could get better experience than stay in a position where they're going to restrict the business growth. All of us know where we tap. I know what my skills are. And I bring other people in to do what I know to help us grow, right?
Yeah, right.
We have a subset of what we can do and what we enjoy. I had a developer, one of my first developers who were working for us, and he built, the first 2 versions of the platform. And as we scaled, we put more and more developers on. And I'm like, senior developer. And he went, no, I just want to code. And I'm like, that's a strong, right? That's a strong person that says that. It's like, I just want to code. I don't want to run a team. I'm not interested in managing anything. I just want to do that, right? Because I think one of the problems in business in general is being put into a position where you're not quite ready for it, or you think you are, but you're not being the best you can be. I'm a great believer in having an environment, and having an environment where you can be the best person and do the best work and enjoy what you're doing.
Yes.
To be thrust into a position where it's not key to what you do doesn't help anybody.
Yeah. I had this discussion with somebody the other day.
Sorry, I'm going on a tangent there.
No. Actually, I had this discussion with somebody and they said, I'm not actually interested in furthering necessarily my career. I'm more interested in nurturing my mental health.
Yes.
And the position I'm in, I love, I'm happy.
Yes.
I don't want to go into a position above. And that's fair.
That's recent though, right? Because, when I started in my career, it was expected you do this, you do that, you do that, 9 to 5, and you'll be here, and it was very, very regimented. The concept of mental health didn't exist, right? You just did what you needed to do. There's an element of grit and bloody mindedness about it to a certain degree, and I think certain people that are successful have an element of that in them.
Yes.
But the idea of like, actually this is going to burn me out. Well, they called it yuppie flu back in the day, right? Just to burn out, right? Because you went hard. But I've got a 19-year-old daughter, and she's very conscious of how her being is in the world and what she wants to do, and looking after that is important to her, and I think that's a good thing, because I see so many of my peers and people back in the day where get destroyed just because it was the accepted thing to do. It's especially in the UK, the stiff upper lip, and you just keep going,
yes.
right? And I think that's good. So I reckon the ability, again, it's a platform to be heard before you never used to get heard, and I think that's what's happening at the moment. But the subset of that, obviously, is that as you said, with the social side of things, there's always going to be the controversy, and you're going to get battered with that's rubbish, I don't like that, and what about the cows, and what about this, and what about... So it just comes with the territory.
Yeah,
every
absolutely.
generation has that as you go through.
So what have you learnt that you instill into founders now? So when they're coming through and they're looking for investment, what advice can you give them?
I think it's be real. Keep it real. I see many pitches like yourself, pitch deck, people pitching. I see many people raise a small amount of money and think that they're on the journey.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a tough one, right? Because I'm a great believer in get as far as you can with as little as you can.
Yes.
Prove it hard and go hard. Because as a founder, keeping your equity is important. More you give away early in the journey, the less you've got to go.
Such good
And
advice.
you have a bit of luck, you're in trouble. I've turned investments away, great investments, not because they weren't wrong for us, but they were so close. The conversation literally went, if you went away and did that, and don't worry about that, you can get there and then come back to us.
Okay.
Because you'll be a different valuation. And I think one of the things that I see is we don't invest on ideas on bits of paper, right? That's number one, right? You've got to have gone proof of concept, MVP. You've got to have a product of some sort, and you must have had, a client using it, even if it's for free. You've got to prove that that people want it, right? That's key. But I think it's how far can you get to it? The business here that we started, we bootstrapped to 800K before we took any money.
Yeah, right.
And we were a profitable company at that point. And the only reason why we took money was to scale, right? Because we knew that we needed that money to scale. And the challenge I see at the moment, some of the founders I see, the advice I would give would be to how far can you actually go, and all we're in a era at the moment where everybody's got a side hustle. Their technology's never been so available and cheap. The ability to just go and do a little bit of work over there to bring some money in to do some stuff. When I looked at what we did originally, like we built websites and we did some recruiting and we did this because we needed to bankroll certain things. So we were still in our full-time jobs, and we basically, that was evenings and weekends, right? And we weren't really in the business until we had 5 employees. So it was a great journey to go on. And I think from our side of things, it's like you've got to prove that you can do it. A bit of grit. So I do see, going back to my original comment about, idea on a bit of paper, I've raised 15 grand, I'm going to be the next Atlassian. You're not, right? You might be, but there's a lot more work that needs doing. And I think it's that conviction. And also the other side of things is, because we are in an era of side hustles, is it a side hustle? Or do you have conviction? And conviction and grit and wanting to do it is paramount.
Something I've learned is there's a really fine line between confidence and arrogance.
Oh, yes.
And it's really hard. I think one time I got a 1-star Google review for Birchal because I rejected a company for the platform, and it was 2 founders, a female med tech company, and both male. And I just asked them some normal questions that I would ask any founder in the space, and they took it very personally. And there was this huge line of arrogance coming through to me that it wasn't necessarily confidence, and they couldn't see past their own egos. And it was clear to me that we wouldn't be able to work with them. Do you come up against that a lot?
Yeah, not that often.
Lucky
every
you.
now and again, but sometimes you see it more with second time round.
Okay.
Because they've had a bit of success, or it's the second business they're building, and more around. Well, I've done it before, so I can do it again.
Yeah, right.
But it might be something completely different. I think there's a bit there sometimes. They don't really get to the filtering system.
So it's like Australian Idol, and you're like Mark Holden, and the producers have already gone through the trash and said, we're not taking them through to Mark.
I think a lot of we get a lot of go through, and we have a criteria that we run through. So all of us briefly have a look at them. We don't just flick them. We do. Everyone's looked at, and then if we have a deeper conviction, then we'll obviously have. Start having conversations with them and understand the business. I think some of the arrogance comes round. The one where I have seen it is where we ask tough questions, and we ask tough questions because we genuinely want to understand more about the business. And the tough questions get asked where there might be 2 or 3 competitors we're aware of in the marketplace, and it's more of that differentiator.
Yes.
As opposed to like something that is completely unique. And they always say that every machine's ever been made and everything's been found, but it hasn't. And I think that element is to say, well, we're going to be better. I'm like, but how? So I think that's where the arrogance comes in sometimes, to be quite honest. But we don't see too many. I don't see too many.
Oh, I was on the phone to a founder the other day, and he was saying how they were the first to market. And so I did a quick Google search to see if that was true. Yeah. And I realised that they were lying to me. And I found it while I was on the phone and asked a few more questions, and I would feel them getting more and more defensive. And I said, I'm not even going to invest. It's the people who are going to be on our platform who are going to invest, and they're going to ask you these questions. Think of this as a warm-up.
Yeah.
I'm helping you. I'm not trying to deter you from this. This is the questions you're going to get, so you better be ready.
I think the other side of it as well from my side is because I'm a technologist, when I go, tell me about your stack and what's defensible. and what have you built, and then you look at it and go, actually, it's built on someone else's platform, it's using someone else's API, and so therefore, how much of a moat can you build around that? Now, there's traction, obviously. There's different moats you can build around it, brand and sales and goodwill in the marketplace. But I think there's the difficult bit in some of the technology at the moment, which is this double-edged sword, as I said, is the fact it's never been so available and simple to, you can do low code, no code and whatever, which is great. But on the other hand, it's low code, no code, and therefore how defensible it is. Right? And you're paying a subscription before you do anything else, and then by the time you add, I think that's the challenge at the moment is, and we're all seeing it, right? We subscribe to something and it's only $10 a month, or $15 a month, and then it's $30 a month, $40 a month. I mean, I did a piece of work because we all, again, within Scalare, we're all hands on still, both with our portfolio and services. So we work with other companies. I was working with a company the other day, and they were a smallish company, and they said, well, we've scaled like this, and our AWS bills up at $50,000 a month. I'm like, $50,000 a month? I'm like, that's for a company that's crazy. So I went in, jumped into their AWS, because I'm AWS certified, and looked through their billing and looked at what they were doing, and then I went to see the dev team, talked through the dev team, and worked out that realistically what they had is 2 or 3 people were pulling a large amount of data down to do some transformational changes on it, push back up. And essentially they were out of band of what was happening with the database. So the database was just, the level of read writes from the database was huge. Yeah. And I just went and saw them, and we refactored it all and then dropped it by $20,000 a month. And that's, and it's simple, but that's the problem, right? Is that it's so quick and easy to turn stuff up. What happens is you watch 20 goes to 30, 30 goes to 50, 100 goes to 200. And before you know it, and then you go, actually, we're in Australia and I want to go to Europe. So I need to cover GDPR and I need a European data center. So you need to put something over there. So you just go, well, I'll do what we do over there and just mirror it. And then your costs go up again. And then you end up having to go global. And then you look at it and go, I need to do languages and I need to do this. So exponentially, that's why it's never a linear. This is why it's sort of like this. So there's nuances of growing businesses, especially as you go global, that you don't think about. When I started my previous company, the idea was, we're going to do this in Australia and business plan looks like this. But then 4 years later, we had offices in New Zealand, the UK, Norway, and the US, and then 4 data centers and 100-odd people, and you go, geez, how did I get here? But also the madness about being a founder is that you're paying the wage of all these people, yet you can't get a mortgage because you're the founder. Yeah. But you're paying all the way, and that's crazy, right? So I've always found little nuances like that which people don't think about when you run businesses. Yeah,
that's really interesting. I feel like I could talk to you all day, but we've been talking for ages. If somebody wants to reach out to you and, either potentially get investment or just pick your brains, how can they get in touch?
Yeah, no, just contact us at Scalare Partners, scalarepartners.com. All our contact details are there. Hit me up on LinkedIn. No issues whatsoever.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And it's just been so interesting to chat to you and uncover a few gems. I really, really appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot.